Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is bear. And I want to begin the video with a quick shout out or thanks to Robert for making another great suggestion for verbs. And I want everyone who's watching this to know that I welcome your suggestions and feedback. So now let's take a look at some of the definitions for this particular verb. The first way you might hear bear used is to mean to support or carry the weight of something. So, with this particular definition, we're talking about like physically carrying or supporting the weight. Now, the second definition, to take responsibility for someone or something, you might think of this as sort of like weight on one's shoulders. So you might hear that noun responsibility used. Who is bearing the responsibility for this thing or this event? A third way you might hear bear used is to mean to endure, manage, or tolerate something. Okay? So, with this particular definition, we have to think of something negative, right? Nobody bears eating cupcakes, right? That's fun, that's pleasant, right? So, this is going to be something more unpleasant that you are enduring or tolerating. A fourth way we can use the verb bear is to mean to carry someone or something. Um, that is pretty clear, right? We might see that used with children and babies in that way. And that really connects to our fifth definition. You might hear the verb bear used to mean to give birth to a child. A sixth way we can use the verb bear is to mean to produce fruit or flowers. So when we use the verb in this way, generally our noun is a plant, a tree, or something like that, bearing fruit or producing fruit. You should know that bear is an irregular verb. To make the progressive form of our verb, all we need to do is add ing to form bearing. But we're going to have spelling changes for both the past tense and the participle forms of this verb. The past tense form is spelled B-O-R-E and it's pronounced bore. Bore. And then the participle form of our verb is going to be spelled B-O-R-N-E and pronounced born. Okay. Now, let's take a look at some phrasal verbs. And what you're going to see from the notes on my screen is that there are many phrasal verbs that utilize our verb bear. And so that's what we're going to focus our discussion on today. The first phrasal verb we're going to look at is bear down. And with our first meaning here, you might hear bear down or bear down on. And the first way we can use this phrasal verb is to talk about advancing, so getting closer to something, and it might be occurring or happening in kind of a threatening manner. Okay? It doesn't always have to be threatening and negative, but many times it is used in that way. It could just mean that we are moving towards something or getting closer. An example of this might be the tunnel fire bore down on homes near Flagstaff a few days ago. So, out in the southwestern United States right now, there are many forest fires, and these fires have been advancing. They're getting closer to neighborhoods, subdivisions near this particular city in Arizona. And oh, I should say, bore down on is an example of the simple past tense. We can see from a few days ago, I've got my time signal there. A second way we can use bear down is to mean to apply maximum effort and focus or concentration to something. Okay? An example of this might be students, we need to bear down and finish this chapter today. So here's a sentence you might hear a teacher say, right? So what she's telling students to do, focus, right? We've got to get through this particular material by the end of our class period. Okay. Here I'm using need to as sort of a semi-modal. I'm talking kind of about a requirement, a necessity, if you will. Many times you're going to hear this bear down used in the imperative as well. So it's really just another way to tell someone focus, right? You're giving them that command. The next phrasal verb we're going to discuss is bear on. This can have a couple different meanings. One would be to influence or affect something. An example of this. How will this new evidence bear on the jury's verdict? Okay. So here I have a simple future question. We can see will, we can see bear, and what I'm asking is there's maybe been some sort of discovery or the presentation of new information at a trial, and we want to know how this new information is going to influence or affect the jury's decision. A second way we can use bear on is to mean to be connected or to be relevant to something. An example here. What information bears on a consumer's creditworthiness? Okay. Here's an example of a simple present question. It's a more information question. I'm asking for someone to describe what is connected or what is relevant. So credit worthiness is sort of the ability to get loans or credit cards, to have credit. And there are many things that can impact someone's ability to get a loan or maybe have a higher limit on a credit card. Let's continue looking at some more phrasal verbs with bear. The next one is bear out. This phrasal verb is used to mean that something is going to be confirmed as being correct. An example of this. The study bears out that the vaccine is safe and effective for children under 6. So here we have bears out. That's another simple present usage. I'm describing a fact. I borrowed this sentence from a news report. One of the vaccine makers here in the United States has submitted their data and information to our government bodies looking for approval to give COVID vaccines to children under 6. And what they're saying is our study confirms that this dosage is safe for children and it helps prevent serious hospitalization. The next phrasal verb we'll look at is bear up. This gets used many times describing someone who remains sort of cheerful or optimistic in a difficult situation. An example of this. Many women have been bearing up in the role of caregivers, teachers, and employees during the pandemic. So maybe not every day, because this has been a long 2 years for a lot of us. But here we have a present perfect progressive sentence, right? And it's describing that some people have still been able to remain positive or cheerful while doing so many different things. Maybe having their kids at home and participating in school, so they've had to assist with that. Maybe they've been taking care of sick people, sick family members. And for many, they continue to work, right? So despite all of those difficulties, they're remaining cheerful or positive. The next phrasal verb we'll look at is to bear up under. And again, this is a bit similar to bear up. So we're talking about dealing with something that is difficult. An example here. How are your flowers and plants bearing up under this cold spring? So here's a question in the present progressive or the present continuous. We want to know, how are the flowers and plants dealing? It's where I live, it's still getting very cold at night, sometimes down to that freezing mark, right? And so we want to know, how are they doing in this difficult environment? The last phrasal verb we're going to look at is to bear with. This is another phrasal verb that you might hear most commonly in the imperative or in the command. And really, what we're telling someone to do when we use this is to be patient. Right? So calm down, give us a little time, wait is essentially what's happening here. So an example of how I've heard this used many a time is I call a particular number for some help or to schedule an appointment, something of that nature, and the person on the phone will say, bear with me while I look up your account. Right? So they're asking me, wait, be patient. I need to find some of your information before we continue with this phone call. Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words and phrases related to the verb bear. And the first word we're going to look at today is just the noun form of this word. And the most common way you're going to hear this noun used is to refer to large, heavy animals that have fur. And there's nothing better than a picture here to illustrate. So if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a picture of a bear. An example of how we might use this noun in a sentence could be, climate change is impacting polar bears. So here's a specific breed or type of bear, one that lives in very cold climates. And yeah, there are many impacts to our changing climate that are negatively impacting or hurting polar bears. A second way you might hear the noun bear used is to refer to something that is difficult or maybe unpleasant to do. So, an example, sometimes I've heard this at work when we have a new piece of software, a new program that has to be, this new program is a bear. It's difficult, it's unpleasant, I don't like using it. Another related word you might hear is the adjective bearable. So this just means to be able to be tolerated. That really connects back to one of those earlier definitions of the verb bear, where we talked about enduring and tolerating. So an example here, a question I asked a friend of mine who moved to Canada recently. Is the winter weather in Canada bearable? Can you tolerate some really cold temperatures for a long time? A phrase that uses bear that you might hear is to bear a resemblance. And what this means is that someone or something has some similar qualities or similar features as either another person or another thing. An example of this. Do you think the baby bears a resemblance to his mom or his dad? Right? So many times we hear questions like this, especially with babies and children, kind of who do they look more like with their features, perhaps in their face or other parts of their body. The last phrase we're going to look at today is to bear in mind. So we use this phrase to kind of instruct someone that they need to be aware or they need to remember a particular fact or circumstance and keep that in mind maybe as we work through something else. So an example of this. Bear in mind, if we have this event outside, we have to prepare for bad weather. Okay, so maybe we have a group of people planning some type of gathering, some type of event, and they're deciding, should we have it outside? Should we have it inside? And maybe many people are excited about the idea of an outdoor event, right? But here, someone else now is going to say, remember, if we go that direction, we also have to make a plan. What are we going to do if it rains? Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.